Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwaka Nemo. Opposition leader and NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga has accused the government of working with the disciplined forces, the military, police and intelligence services to rig the general election. It's a major allegation and one that will fuel concerns about violence during the general election. In fact, according to a recent InfoTrack poll, election-related violence is the overriding concern for Kenyans. With good reason, too. We have a history of violent campaigns and contestation of polls. Some of the violence is ethnic-based and some, as female candidates will know, gender-based. So much so that the Cabinet Secretary for Interior announced yesterday that security would be enhanced for female candidates. The Constitution stipulates that elections must be free from violence, intimidation, improper influence or corruption. So our question this morning is this: is the government doing enough to ensure that the general election is free from violence? Well, today's guest is government spokesman Eric Iraibe. We'll also hear the opinions of our panelists, Mutegi Njau and Charles Odhiambo, both of Royal Media Services. We'd also like to hear from you. Our SMS number is 22422, and you can reach us on Twitter using the hashtag Cheche. So, good morning and welcome. It's a pleasure to have you back with us. And so the big thing around the election, well, overnight has been the allegation from Mr. Odinga that the government security apparatus is being used to rig the election. How would you respond to that?
Udwak, I find myself in a very tight position when I have to directly answer or respond to political statements, but I would want to say that it's very unfortunate Raila Odinga's utterances. I believe he is old enough, he is a Kenyan who should have known better, but he has chosen to politicize every move for the last 1 year. And how conflicts developed, I have to be very honest as the government spokesman. I'm not looking for votes. Violence is conceived. Somebody sees an issue he wants to solve and he chooses to go the way of conflict. We saw this when we were changing the IBC. We have seen this in the multiplicity of utterances where the courts are supposed to be Jubilee, the IBC is supposed to be Jubilee, and now this allegation really is very unfortunate. What I'll do is that I'll take you back in time and I'll just read from the Waki report directly. And part of it says the report recommends concrete measures to improve performance and accountability of state security agencies and coordination within the state security mechanism, including strengthening joint operational preparedness arrangements, developing comprehensive operational review processes, and so on and so forth. I want to tell Kenyans that 2007 was a watershed. The state security agencies were blamed for having not been prepared to change things. There are people who believe that violence... Let me finish this.
No, because you are making it sound as if Mr. Odinga's comments come from nowhere. You've quoted the Waki report, and that was in the aftermath of security agencies being involved. You will remember that AP officers were beaten up and in some instances killed in areas where they were accused of interfering with the election. Now you can continue.
I would want to make it quite apparent that due to the politicization of very, very simple activities like joint preparedness drills, joint preparedness meetings, people politicize this to excite their supporters against very innocent people. Kenya Defense Forces are totally innocent of politics. And let me state it very, very categorically here. The disciplined services in Kenya are not and will not be involved in elections by way of influencing anybody. And if we look at it on a factual matter, If a general appeared anywhere in this country and says, vote this way, I think Kenyans will find it very strange. So, the point I want to put across is this way. We are preparing, and we shall continue preparing to ensure that the election remain violence-free, and those who try violence will not push us to the level we were in 2007. There is no politics in it. No member of Kenya Defense Forces is preparing to rig any election whatsoever. No member of the National Intelligence Service is preparing to do anything concerning actual work in elections. We are preparing to provide security. We are preparing for joint effective operations to quell any violence where it may arise. We are preparing to share and coordinate intelligence, and once again I state with all humility, Honorable Raila Odinga was very irresponsible to come out and associate our apolitical state security agencies with the politics. It amounts to incitement of the public against the security services, and all of us have seen woodwork. Every time the security and the populace work together for law and order, it works. We have been working together with NASA people to prepare for rallies, to provide security. You saw administrative policemen, you saw Kenya policemen when Raila was in areas like Meru, where it's not a stronghold. And we must, if I seem to talk politics, you'll have excuse me for today, because we must state facts as they are. Whenever he is holding a campaign rally today, the state security agencies will be there to provide security, not to rage in favor of NASA. Where the other candidates will go today, there will be state security agencies. On election day, they will be there, and we are increasing the violence, the vigilance. In case you are thinking that if you are defeated from the ballot, you will win through violence, kindly, you'll be dealt with in a very effective, coordinated manner. We are not going back to 2007.
So, Mr. Kiraithe, is it true what Raila Odinga said, that the activity is going on as far as training, joint trainings are concerned, and that the activity is going on in Kakamega as far as intelligence gathering is concerned, to prepare for a violence-free election?
In Kakamega, the case of Kakamega, I'm not going to share how we coordinate security agencies.
No, what I'm asking, is it true that the activity is going on across
Kakamega, the last military people who are there went there for a recruitment. It is false and outrightly irresponsible to say that the military is in Kakamega preparing to rig elections. Why would the military be today in Kakamega preparing to rig elections? Odhiambo, tell me the mechanisms which you deploy the military today in Kakamega to rig elections. Just break it down for me.
No, what I'm asking is, Raila Odinga said the activity is going on somewhere in
that was a lie.
Training. So there is no joint training.
That was a lie. If you go to Embakasi today, you'll find no less than 5,000 recruits training down there at the APTC. The whole place from Embakasi, from where we have KQ headquarters, you know it, in the new bypass, GSU training school, we have recruits. The military is usually the key last point of call for airport security. You will see them walking there, and therefore this is a pure misrepresentation of facts. We can go there after this, and you will see the training of recruits going on.
Okay, let's just unpack that, because I think there were two things in your question.
Yes.
He talked about Kakamega, and I think the allegation was that there are several military officers in Kakamega at the former provincial premises, and that they are being prepared to act as polling officials when the IBC's recruitment gets underway.
That's a total lie.
That's a lie.
That's a total
So there are no military officers in Kakamega at the moment.
I can't tell you there are no military officer anywhere in this country, including those going on leave. But there are no, and there will be no military officers being trained by IEBC to rig elections.
Well, they're not being trained by the IEBC, but they're being prepared
to
submit themselves. No, this is the allegation, that they are being prepared so that the IBC can recruit them.
Not
that the IBC is preparing them.
100%. Even if they walk through here, you'll see that this is not an employee of IBC. Period.
I mean, during you have told that joint operations, joint things, is the Kenya military involved in any way with the security operations during the elections? The armed forces, Kenya armed forces, are they involved in any way?
What you need to know is that all matters of national security, as much as services are different, I'll give you the best example is terrorism. Always there are joint operational centers in this country. I don't want to start breaking down how do we do our operations, but in terms of security preparedness, in terms of solving of emergencies through our disaster center, in terms of dealing with issues where the internal security might at some point require the reinforcement of our defense services, there are always joint operation preparedness and coordination meetings. The military monitors what the police is doing, so that in case they have to come in, they will not be total strangers to the joint operations. This is not...
Let's clarify that.
Yes.
Because the police service is mandated with internal security.
Yes.
And the military has to deal with external security, and hence the joint operations. Let's just clarify that for our viewers.
The issue of joint operations is that from time to time, like you saw in Baringo during those clashes, from time to time, Mount Elgon, the capacity... Even
Westgate, don't you?
Even Westgate.
Although that was controversial, which is why...
There are procedures, and normally we have been following this from the United States, where for the purpose of homeland security, if you look at it now as homeland security, the external and the internal at some point merge. If you go to our constitution, which is providing for national security, it is very clear on what each will be doing, but it has also left the provision for joint operational. One, the most important thing, and the one we were blamed for in the work report, which I have just quoted, is that the systems, the coordination of at what point, because people are dying in Washingishu, people are dying in Homa Bay, people are dying in Kisumu, and the military is seated in the barracks, having been paid for by Kenyans. What the work report found is that they should have been involved much earlier. At what point, as you escalate the situation, at what point do you mobilize the entire national security machinery, including the military? And what I don't want to be lost here, that we have joint operational centers, let's say at Jogo House, that we have other operational centers around the country where the county security committee sit and the regional security committee sit, and the military are part and parcel of that, the defense services, so that we don't want it to be lost that somebody picks that and he says this is a meeting to prepare to rig elections. That is false. So I don't want to work as much as I would want to break it down, for me to seem to be saying they are now sitting together more than they have done in the past, or to confirm that falsehood. Very unfortunately coming from a man I have a lot of respect for, Honorable Raila Odinga. That is an unfortunate statement. That is an unfortunate misrepresentation of facts. I know propaganda is part and part of campaign, but I think, Honorable Raila, we are just taking this propaganda too far.
Is it possible, given the share of budget that the security apparatus get, is it possible for them to detect violence before it happens?
Of course, Odiambo, they detect violence before it happens.
I'm asking because you have, in your opening remarks, you issued a very stern warning that anybody who will cause violence. I'm wondering, why do you wait for somebody to cause violence?
We look at the signs and the symptoms of preparing violence. When you are preparing for violence, first of all, you conceive the violence. Then you mobilize for it. The minute you have set people that the problem we have of the day must be solved through violence, you are done. You are 50% through. And therefore, when somebody continues insisting that the solution to these elections is violence, you condemn everything and nothing they do. What the IBC does, what it doesn't do, what the government does, what it doesn't do, is only one word: that we are going to be rigged. And then we have had statements which have never been retracted, that we won't go to court because we can't trust those courts. How come somebody cannot trust anybody? The minute you tell your people that this one you have to fight it out, you have closed all legitimate avenues. You don't need to be very intelligent to detect that someone is preparing for an eventuality of violence. We must be courageous enough to say it. And I want to sit here and tell our security services, wherever they are, we have a responsibility on behalf of the homeland of Kenya to prepare and ensure that any attempt to ignite that violence is nipped in the bud. So joint operational preparedness will continue. Our services will continue working together. They'll continue doing the drills. They'll continue working with the public, because everywhere you go in this country, everywhere, the ordinary Kenyans want peace. When the Infotrack said their concern is insecurity, they mean it. Kenyans want peace.
And we'll come back to that, but let's just be very clear that in response to these allegations, what you're telling us is that joint operations have been ongoing. But the question becomes, have you included the opposition as stakeholders in this election, given the history that we have around violence? Have you ensured that there is no room for misinterpretation? Because you seem to be suggesting that what is taking place is being misconstrued as attempts to rig. So have you let the various parties know what is going on?
There is nothing being misconstrued here. We have at joint operational centers operational in this country very openly since Westgate, mainly since Westgate. We have been seeing joint operational procedures. I was in the secretariat that was preparing for the elections, especially in the security, 2013. We invited, at every point, we invite all political parties to brief them on what we expect to be their part on it. One thing I will tell you is that in operation coordination meetings, we shall not invite Jubilee, we shall not invite NASA in security meetings. But in terms of briefing them on their part, they will tell you they are being regularly briefed. I know that we even go to them personally and tell them, as a candidate who is dealing with these dynamics, this is what you ought to be doing, this is what we expect of you. And let me say it openly here, we expect Honorable Raila Odinga to be mobilizing for peaceful, non-violent elections. That is an expectation I cannot apologize for. All the security services expect every politician to mobilize against terrorism, to mobilize against crime, to mobilize against violence. And this operation center, for example, has been there, and military officers of all ranks have been walking in and out of Jogo House at every point in time.
Sorry,
so there is no point of misconstruing here. This is a deliberate, a lie, deliberately coined and told.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's that. The other point that he makes, I'd like us to go through everything that he said, so that you have an opportunity to respond. He has claimed, Mr. Odinga, that meetings have taken place at Lake Naivasha Lodge, Lake Elementaita Lodge, the Great Rift Valley Lodge, and that officials present have included the Commander of the Army, Commander of the Air Force, Commander of the Defense College, Director of the National Intelligence Service, and the Director of the CID in Eldoret. And so the question he would like answered is why a select group of military officers are involved in training civilians like county commanders.
I think that is a very big lie, both in content and the manner in which it is put. And the lie revolves around the fact that a lot of retreats, a lot of government retreats are held in Naivasha all the time. Even if you go to the Naivasha hotels today, I'm sure there will be people meeting on some election issue. I know one which was had all information officers, including NGOs, and therefore the members of public. This is what I'm calling incitement. Who see military officers walking in?
Could you dispel, deal with the allegation directly? And you have told us that there are government retreats taking place, right?
They take place all the time, but let me put it very clearly. The retreat of the nature mentioned there, of select military officers, council, that is a lie.
But there have been retreats involving military officers
and
senior security officials around Naivasha.
Yeah. What I want to put to you, Odhiambo, very, very clearly, is that retreats to prepare, especially of the composition mentioned there, at the best of times, you can't even get this. They have mechanism. It is not the commanders who go for the meetings, by the way. They go to open and close. But let me put it very clearly. That one is an outright lie and told for a very nefarious purpose.
Are county commanders being trained?
County commanders are being trained.
On what?
In fact, on everything, on communication, on joint operations. We don't want a situation to arise where people are calling themselves APs, KPs, wildlife, whatever prisons. We want one national security body which can be able to coordinate, which can be able to work with members of the public to do very early detection of violence and to stop it before it occurs. If it occurs, to be able to put it down effectively within the shortest time possible and minimal loss to life and property.
Okay, I'm told we have to take a break now. This is Cheche, and we're live on Citizen TV. Is the government doing enough to ensure that the general election is free from violence? Our SMS number is 22422. You can reach us on Twitter as well. The hashtag is Cheche.
Deserve you and this life.
Tell him that if he wants to see his son again, he has to accept my conditions.
Julio, what are you mixed up in? Please, just tell me, what are you mixed up in? Please tell me.
Katya, I swear I will change.
Daddy,
I told you to calm down. Don't forget that we're watching you.
Honestly, I'd love to get rid of Julio. I'd give everything to get rid of Nicolas. We cannot forget about our oath, all right? Never.
Mujeres de Negro. Starting 24th June 2017. Only on Citizen Television.
Usinikasirishe zaidi, sawa sawa? Yaani hivyo jaribu kumaanisha kuwa mamangu nani mwingine, Nela nani mwingine. Nakupa garantia. Shukue atakuacha.
Mtu anakupenda amepeka kabisa katika moyo wake, lakini bado unakuja unamfanyia mambo ya kupumbavu. Maana yake nini? Kwenda bundo. Wewe unaleta mibundo wewe. Wewe unaleta mibundo wewe.
Wewe si nimekwambia ukija nyumbani kwangu sio umeelewa wewe.
Wewe una jinsi zangu zitatoa sura mbaya kama ya Moni.
Wewe una wazimu ni
Chekeni.
jamani, sio nilazimisha nikupende.
Mapenzi yako ni sekunde ya kulazimisha.
Welcome back to Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. Now, Article 81 of the Constitution mandates that elections must be free from violence, intimidation, improper influence, or corruption. But we saw violence during the political party nominations. So what does that bode for the general election in August? Well, that's the subject of our conversation this morning with our guest, Government Spokesman Eric Uribe. And before the break, you addressed the allegations by the from the NASA presidential flag bearer, who alleged that military and the various discipline services were being used to rig the election. But we also talked about the Infotrak poll, which told us that the overarching concern around these elections is election-related violence. As a government official, as someone who speaks for the government, how does that make you feel?
Well, what I would want to say, Udwak, is that it gives us what the public is expecting of us. It gives every security officer a wakening up that as much as we are being excited about elections, about being excited about candidates, we have a very, very solemn responsibility to Kenyans to ensure that they go through these elections and that no violence occurs.
That's interesting, because I remember you as police spokesman back in 2007. Of course, I was in a different context. Yes. I was working abroad. And so 10 years later, how can it be that Kenyans are still concerned about election-related violence? Why is this still with us?
It is still with us because mainly our politicians are the same players. Kenyans have changed. They voted in a new constitution. They really wanted law and order desperately. But unfortunately, our politicians have not changed an inch.
It has nothing to do with the security services remaining the same? The
security services have become what Kenyans expected them to become. They have been merged. They have one joint command structure. The security services have been preparing more. The security services have received bigger budgets. But the politicians who incited people to violence in 2007 never learned any lessons.
So who has failed here?
They are still, I think the politicians have succeeded in remaining the same as they were. And I can say this with the authority. If we went back to those clips, the utterances of August, and I feel this very strongly because I'm a Kenyan, and I sat there, I went to police stations from Omabe to Molo and other places in Kenya, and saw a police officer walking out so that 5-6 mothers and their children can occupy their houses. And that's why I'm telling you, the security services have learned their lesson.
The reason why the politicians have remained the same is because those people who incite, nothing happens to them. Precisely. There was this utterance which the Honorable former Prime Minister about Kajiado, where he's denying he didn't sit. And I had the IG saying, arrest him. I had everybody arrest him. Some in the social media they ask, when the IG says arrest him and he's not arrested, forget about Raila who is that. What about other small people like Mandago, who have said, if you vote for this, in Eldoret, which was a hotbed of violence in 2007, because nothing is done.
So both the politicians have succeeded in remaining the same.
Yeah,
somebody who is supposed to implement the constitution the Kenyans promulgated has failed to do that.
Odhiambo.
Who is this somebody?
Odhiambo. Do you want the OCS Kajiado to go this morning and arrest Raila Odinga?
I don't want him to arrest him because I want the law to take its course.
I want a different thing. I want Raila to take notice of what Odhiambo has said and use his massive influence in this country for other purposes, other than suggesting that the Kisis, the Merus, the what in Gong will move out after August 8.
Did he suggest that?
Yeah.
When you are saying, look here, we must tell the naked truth. I told you, me, I'm not looking for votes. We must tell the naked truth. when you are suggesting that this concept of ancestral land, which is very much in Kenya, which I think is misplaced, that when you are suggesting expressly that those people who have settled in Meru, let me go to Meru where I come from, that those people who have come here and owned land, remember in the greater Meru we have everybody including Britons. I have a neighbor who is from Nyanza. When I go and stand and suggest that for justice to be done, some of these people will have to move out. What do I mean? Which people am I referring to?
So who suggested that?
Let us, the covering up of the truth, which you are now actively engaging in on TV, is part of our problem. Let us look at it this way.
You just accused Charles of covering up the truth. You also seem to be distorting Mr. Odinga's
by
remarks.
asking for who suggested that people move out.
What is the impact of the statements made?
What is the impact of the way you understood the statements? Because he clarified his remarks. But our point here, the point of this conversation this morning, is to ask whether you as government are doing enough to ensure that we have no violence during these elections. And we were on the case about, we were on the point rather, about whether, if the politicians have not changed, whether the security has changed. Because what we seem to be getting into is this politician on this side is inciting, but you're not looking in your own backyard to say, well, that politician has also said some things which merit
let me widen it.
And so how?
Let me widen it. You are too eager to defend a certain position that you are not even giving me an opportunity to talk. When Mandago, when Kuria, none of them comes from my backyard. My backyard is in Meru. When even Udwak or Kiraiza or Mutegi or Ziembo, listen to me. You have to listen to me.
I am listening to you. Go ahead. But I also need to clarify some of the distortions.
What I would want to put very clearly, when a politician with certain levels of following, or let me put it in very plain language, our animals are equal, but some are more equal than the others. If you have a following of 10,000, then somebody else has a following of 1 million or millions, we don't treat you the same. And the sensitivity of your remarks, the possible impact of violence from that level cannot be that of Korea. And therefore, once again, I'm not campaigning for anybody. I don't care where you vote as a Kenyan. Is that the politicians with huge influence must be very, very cautious of what they say. Let them ask for votes. They know that Kenyans can give them votes, but don't mobilize for violence and then sit back and say the security services have not changed. The security services are tactical, they are cautious, and they are not going to undertake any action that would justify an eruption of violence as we are talking today. They are not going to do that. We have the security and stability of this country at heart. And we are enjoining politicians of all shades. You might not be aware that down at the village levels where we are, there are MCAs doing the same thing at a much smaller scale.
You mean inciting or what?
Inciting and just walking on the edge of the law without breaking the line. And we are also telling them that elections, Kenyans will give you votes. Kenyans are not discriminative. Sell your policies. Don't indirectly mobilize for violence simply because you know the law of evidence is keeping you just at the edge of the law.
Let's come back to the opinion poll, because I want to get into you know, how the disparities and how parts of the country feel.
Yes.
And so there was a sense that with policing excuse me please, and deployments, that there are disparities, so that in areas like Nyanza and Western, there's a sense that you know, they experience harsher policing, particularly around elections.
Let me give you something very clear, because I've been a policeman in this country. and I've contacted countrywide. In Nyanza mainly, the people are usually very social. And it's very strange, because if you go to Kondele, you'll be told the names of all the police stations, of all the officers in that station, by the people on the road, by name. I think they don't have that fear of the law, and they interact a lot. Now, anytime violence erupts, and then you have to put, now the police are kind of told now where your helmets and all that. It looks very abnormal. By the way, even the crime rate in Nyanza is very low because of the interaction they have. In Western, the areas you'll find, and this has gone down very highly, is especially Mount Elgon. For some reason, due to historical reasons, you remember Idi Amin and illegal firearms, crime tend to be very, very violent.
But we hear that people are stockpiling now, and weapons.
Those are just
those are rumors.
Those are alarmist things.
Alarmist things.
Criminals in Kenya have always owned illegal firearms, and we work a lot to detect them. But when you hear that someone is stockpiling firearms, I want you to be a detective. Dig deeper, so that we get that stockpile now, not on it.
Okay, if we take the example that you've given us of, a changed surveillance detection, we had violence during the party nominations. How is it that your new look services were unable to contain the violence that we saw, and that we haven't heard much about a lot of these people who caused the violence being held to account?
You might not have heard, but a lot of actions have been taken. Another thing you must
actions such as what?
Prosecution, arrests.
Who's been arrested? Who's been prosecuted?
Summons and warnings. They are now political activists. Those who are paid to mobilize others, to collect stories.
Who's been warned? Who's been summoned?
Who knows that they have been summoned? I don't have the details here, and even if I had, I wouldn't share them, because there's a relationship between the police and the people they police, and you need to be...
What areas are these people in? Tell us.
And I am glad to answer that question. Throughout the country.
Throughout the country.
The temptation to use violence to gain political influence, although the bigger the office, the bigger the temptation, is a temptation Kenyans enjoy in very many parts. That's why you see Infotrack saying Kenyans have concern for political violence.
The National Cohesion Commission says that there are 19 counties which are at risk for violence. Are you doing anything differently around those counties?
Automatically.
Such as?
How do you deploy? How do you collect intelligence? Because there are areas you must give greater focus than other areas. But generally we don't want to concentrate in government on branding any place. What should come out to every member of public is that in every area in this country we have every potential and we are capable of holding very peaceful elections, just like UK, just from like any other country. No place in this country should have violence as part of elections. And I know that working with the members of public, working with the multiplicity of candidates who want a fair game, we are capable of achieving it.
However, in Bungoma and certain other counties, governors and the
local militia.
Yes. Why is it that these things are being done by not the police, but by the IBC?
Sorry, clarify your question.
IBC has summoned people like Lusaka because they were
involved in violence.
If we were involved, why is it the IBC doing that and not the local police?
The IBC is the lead constitutional agency for all matters elections. Everybody else comes to support that, but the police have got a cardinal responsibility for matters crime, matters law and order, violence is criminal. But what I would tell you about the IBC is that a warning from the IBC is a very serious matter for a politician, and I congratulate them for that. They should actually summon more of these people and tell them, we shall disqualify you.
Kenyans generally have an issue about perception, like what we were engaging in a short while ago.
Yes.
What you say and what I perceive from what you say, and
Yes.
social values.
Yes.
Apart from preparedness in law and order with security agencies, is the government doing anything else to keep off violence? Because the people who engage in violence are the common wananchi.
The Nyumba Kumi has been very active. I know they have worked with religious leaders. By the way, the Nyumba Kumi is a state security function, but mainly community based. They have been doing a lot for the last 2 years, and they are keeping up the effort. You may have noticed that what we used to call the provincial administration, the public administration bodies have been revitalized. They have been given more training, more resources in terms of maintaining the stability. And you can see very clearly that our Commander-in-Chief, His Excellency the President, a friend of mine told me yesterday that the President should not mention accepting defeat. And I told them, this is in his responsibility as the Commander-in-Chief and the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in this country. He must tell people that losing elections is normal. It doesn't mean that he is saying you lose, but it means he is telling people law and order must prevail whether you lose or win elections.
I don't want to draw a conclusion, but I want to pick what was reported of the CS, General Nkaiseri,
yes,
telling ladies that you have gotten into a man's, and I paraphrase, a man's domain. You should not cry about being beaten. You should prepare to fight.
The fight he meant is not physical. You know that our ladies can't do that. Is that some of them
would have just gave
the candidates the candidate, I don't know her particular case, but of course we all have perceptions.
People
the ladies
men and
should not feel so intimidated even before they step out that they want to see 5-10 policemen around before they sell their policy. So he was encouraging them. It is not fighting in body or physically, it is fighting in spirit, because the CS is telling them what every Kenyan knows. Look at the female teachers in Samburu.
And again,
somebody becomes a moral.
The challenge is that is your own perception. Maybe somebody else out there perceived it differently.
You must address, and if anybody perceives it differently, let me clarify that the CS want our ladies to come out, sell their policies, campaign for themselves. We are there to protect them, but don't expect each lady to walk around with 10. We won't find enough to do that, but we are there to protect you. We shall be very keen. The people whom Honorable Nkaiseri commands, General Nkaiseri commands, that is the police down to the lowest level, are there to support you. So it is not like prepare yourself to fight physically, but go out there and campaign. Don't feel that your opponent, because he's a man, he has any fight. In fact, with what has corrected me, we have seen them equally fight. So sell your policies without fear. We are there for you.
Okay, here's what some of our viewers are saying. Cheche, I'm watching you from Lodwar. What Mr. Kirabe is doing is threatening Raila, but I want to tell him security operators were used in 2007 and now they're being trained. My question is, what are they being trained on? Kenya is bigger than all of these people, so stop being biased. Mr. Kirabe, you're not being sincere. Your interpretation of what Mr. Odinga said is political propaganda, and you're doing that to serve your political masters. Can you please ask Mr. Kirabe to stop lying on national TV that there are 2 laws in Constitution, where if you've got many followers you're dealt with differently. We ordinary Kenyans suffer just because of that. We got 1 Constitution. If they can't implement it, then they have failed. Morning, Cheche. I'm so disappointed with the manner in which Mr. Kirabe is trying to fool Kenyans, and really that's the feedback that we're getting from our viewers.
Well, I am sure that there are many more viewers than that. But let me
there are several more, but what I have read reflects the sentiment that's coming through.
Let me put it very carefully. In this country, everybody is frightened to the core by politicians. If a politician says an outright wrong thing, even those in the media try to dilute it so that it sounds right. If the government spokesman does not sit here and say this is wrong, notwithstanding the influence of the person doing it, no other Kenyan will do it. There will be a government spokesman 10 years to come, and they will be having a responsibility to tell Kenyans, no politician, mobilize people to vote for you. Mobilize people for peace, for democratic elections. Don't mobilize people for violence.
What about that concern about two different laws for Kenyans?
That is a perception. I don't know that there are two different laws.
You just say
that when it comes to administration of the laws
are equal, and that
I am putting it very clearly. When it comes to administration of the law, when it comes to law enforcement, and man A has 1,000 followers and man B has only 20 followers, in terms of professional acumen, you must treat the management of those two cases differently, because at the end of the day you want social stability, you want peaceful elections. If you say, if you walk out, let me tell you if what I say will happen what. If you walk out and try to imply that today the security services are set, you have talked about perception, to arrest and is to stop any particular candidate from taking part in elections, from campaigning for himself and his political party, then you will light a fire. You will have actively taken part in what those who don't want law and order want you to do. That is a trap. We are prudent people. What I want to tell you as Kenyans is that the security people you are seeing are very humble people. Civil servants like myself are extremely humble people, and we are spending day and night to look at how we can tactfully, how we can legally, how we can professionally ensure that there is peace today, there will be peace during elections day, and we shall have a post-election period that is free from violence.
If you accept the argument downstairs, an OCS in a police station, and this MCO or this governor has committed some problem. So it means therefore the OCS will wonder, if we arrest the governor, a governor candidate, or the existing governor, he has done whatever, the same argument, then it means nobody will be arrested.
And actually that is followed up. Government is hypocritical. If they want to make arrests, they must start in Jubilee. That comes from Samuel. And there are several of our viewers who ask, if you're talking this way about Raila, why have you not gone after Mr. Duale? Because he made some comments about, a specific ethnic community.
I said my campus must come from Paris.
Let me say it very clearly. What Duale said is not acceptable in a modern and civilized society.
What was done to him?
And I can tell you, I won't tell you what we did with the leader of the majority in parliament that time, because it is now on full recess. But I'm sure Mr.
Why can't you tell us?
Mr. Duale will not repeat such utterances again. However, off the cuff, he would think they are.
When a journalist writes a story that seems to rub somebody high in the government the wrong way, he is arrested without batting an eyelid and spends 2 nights in the police cell.
With no charge.
Without a charge. When a politician of high ranking says something that would light the country, he is warned privately and let go.
Nobody is saying that he is warned privately and let go, but I wished you would bring the issue of Watermenya. Watermenya are some of the journalists I have interacted
the Nation
with
television journalists
for a very, very long time. I looked at the story he wrote, and anybody suggesting that he was arrested because of that story, I don't agree with them. The police said why they arrested him. They gave a press statement to that effect. There is a case in court which is continuing.
Which one?
Let's wait for it.
Which case?
When you are
There's nothing
once
in
you
court.
are meant
He's
to appear in court.
He's been asked to appear next week, which should give them time to prepare the case, but there is no case against him at the moment.
Once the police go to court and inform a magistrate that they have arrested somebody and they are put him under investigation, and they even go on to appeal to have them in custody, that is already a proceeding in a court of law. So it's for clarity. But I can tell you that what he wrote, I have read it several times, does not amount to a crime. Okay, he might have insinuated or created perceptions, but there is no law in this country saying that Odhiambo, after you leave here, you cannot go to any club. That if I invite you for my birthday party, you cannot bring a bouquet of flowers because I'm in the government and you're in the media. The lobby which these gentlemen in government were accused to join, or the club, is a club. The function was private. Nobody has said that they coerced, they used the office to coerce either their staff.
Actually, Mr. Kiraibe, in the interest of time, that was not the...
I want to clarify.
The allegation was that he was bribed. The law says both the giver and the taker are guilty. Where was the giver in this case?
I don't want to share the details of any case. But if you know a little bit about policing, you know that bribery, the minute you intend to be bribed and whoever is bribing you goes to the police, a trap will be laid and you'll be caught. But I don't want to get into those details. What I would want to make very clear is that there is an impression that this man was arrested because he said some citizens, I did not see any figures or any hard evidence that they contributed so much or any might have contributed. We can tell you that, and I want to tell Kenyans, being invited by a political aspirant who is your brother, your friend, an old acquaintance, or somebody you admire, and quietly going there and giving him 10 shillings or just offering him a prayer is not criminalized anywhere in law. It should not be criminalized. It doesn't matter what. And if your employer today, the citizen, comes to censure you about that, rush to court and tell the world that was your private right. The government is not about to start trying to see the money you have put in your account, whom you support in what cause, except of course if you are supporting things like terrorism or other illegal activities. Politics are perfectly legal, legitimate, and provided for in law. We have code of conduct that govern our integrity and how we behave around certain situations. But thank you very much for the advice. It will be abuse of office. Yeah, we'll take a break now. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizens TV. Send your opinions on whether the government is doing enough to curb violence during the general election to our SMS number, which is 22422, or you can tweet us using the hashtag Cheche.